So welcome to the 12 noon panel in typical fashion. We're running a little bit late on this, but nonetheless extremely important. This is actually truly the conversation, and if you're not in the room, I'm hoping that you're listening outside the room or perhaps on this live stream. This is truly the conversation where the rubber meets the road. And this is the one that is not quite so warm and fuzzy to talk about as the first panel. This is where we get into the hard discussions, the hard truths, the things that a lot of people don't necessarily like to talk about or want to agree on. But what we have to do moving forward is figure out on this path as we move forward what will work. We need this roadmap, and we need to figure out how to get from A to B. Now, as much as we have very strong convictions of the way that things should be, and we know what that is, it doesn't mean that we can pass that by all of the voters. We have to find that happy medium. So as we look at understanding this roadmap, the terrain, the direction that we have to go, we've also got to decide, what does this vehicle look like for 2012? Is this an omnibus where we're trying to do all things for all people, or is this a little bit more stealthy, more of a sports car? You know, we've just got to figure this out moving forward. We've got an exciting panel, and my son Jackson to say hello again. I love how he's quiet until I get on the microphone. All day today it's been a theme, so I appreciate your patience. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dave Krute. He's the publisher for the Voters Information Guide to discuss how to move forward in these next steps.
First of all, I used to publish the Voter Information Guide with my uncle Larry Levine, and now I own the Election Education Guide. Let's get that right before Larry gets mad at me. I am speaking on the issue of how to bring the coalition of teachers and firefighters and nurses and keep the police and legislators on the Republican side from endorsing against us. I believe that we can do that by writing a comprehensive message, either a statute or possibly a California state constitutional amendment that includes hemp, which has been on the ballot in 2 states and won both times, as well as the smoking of medical marijuana or fun marijuana, cannabis, however you want to call it. I believe that in order to do that, we would have to write a statute that guarantees money going directly to local police and firefighters, nurses, not nurses, but ER rooms in the counties where we've had a lot of problems keeping them open. I believe that we give a percentage to the state legislature for the general funds and a percentage to the local governing body, whether it's the city council or county supervisors. If it's written that way, no one will endorse against getting a boatload of money in their pocket. And that's exactly what Jim Bell was saying. You have to give them a reason to want to be with you. And the reason will be money. It's always money when it comes to government. I also believe that we need to keep the dispensaries and the growers on our side by making sure that they're the first point of sale places allowed to be open so that it can't be co-opted by larger companies. And if we do this right, and I'm working with some top attorneys right now, and there's actually a group that's formed called the Budget Economic Environmental Protection Alliance, Beat All, which is working specifically to create a measure that will help the economy, help the state budget, help local city government, help police and firefighters and nurses and school districts to have money even when our legislators holding up our budget because they can't vote. We also need to write a law that's so comprehensive that the legislators don't need to take 8 to 10 years to figure out how to implement it. If you remember, 215 passed, and it was, what, 6 or 8 years before SB 420 actually came into effect? In today's legislature, it'll take 20 years for them to get something done. So we should really be writing something that literally lays it out. We need to have the nurses on board, we need to have Parks and Rec on board, we need to have school teachers on board. We do that, and we'll pick up the 10 or 15% of the voters that we need to get into the high 50s and pass this thing. We've been over 45% always, since 1973 when my uncle ran the first campaign for marijuana statewide, and always the only thing we're missing is getting the police out of the way so that we can then pick up some endorsements and pick up that 10, 12% we need to really push this over the top. And I'll just stop right there and let the panel discussion happen in a little while. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Dave. Next, I'd like to introduce someone many of you are very familiar with, Mr. Bill Zimmerman of Zimmerman and Markman.
I'm going to try to run through a rather complex analysis quickly so that I can finish within the 5-minute time limit that's been allocated. We need to develop a strategy to win. And developing a strategy to win in this context is fairly straightforward. There are several groups, 4 in particular, whose minds we have to change on marijuana legalization to get over 50%. And I'm basing this judgment both on the results of the Prop 19 race and on more recent polling that's taken place since then. Those 4 groups are seniors, Latinos, single women of childbearing age, and to a much lesser extent our friends in Northern California who failed to support Prop 19. Leaving the last group aside for a minute because they don't constitute very large numbers, we need to focus our efforts on changing the minds of a large number of voters in those 3 demographic groups: people over 65, women of childbearing age, and Latinos who vote. In order to reach those people, the second element of our strategy has to be fundraising, because we cannot reach those people and change their minds unless we can deliver convincing messages to them. And the only way to deliver a convincing message to most of those people is with television advertising. They do not seek the news out on the internet. Indeed, they don't seek the news out at all. It's very difficult to reach them through the press. Our message, when delivered by the press, is polluted by their point of view rather than ours, so it's not a clean way of delivering our message. We can't reach those people through grassroots organizing, and we can't reach them repeatedly with messages and be able to change the message that we deliver to them in light of opposition messages unless we have the means to use television advertising. So, if the 2 critical elements of a winning strategy are to reach those 3 demographic groups and to reach them with television advertising, what are the impediments to developing that strategy? There are several. First, in order to get the money to deliver the message, we have to convince some very wealthy people that it's worth investing in a marijuana legalization initiative. We're not going to be able to do that unless we can convince those people that we can win. And not only win in a static environment, but win in a dynamic environment, one in which our opponents may be acting much more effectively than they did in the Prop 19 campaign. I would remind you of a campaign waged in 2004 on behalf of Proposition 66. This was an initiative we wrote to modify the worst aspects of the state's 3 strikes law. We had public opinion behind us. Indeed, we were carrying over 60% of the vote 3 weeks before the election. We had neutralized all the institutional sources of support on the other side, the prison guards union in particular, but others as well. And 3 weeks before the election, a right-wing billionaire who had a personal incident, I believe his sister was harmed in a violent crime in California, he decided that our reform should be blocked, and he gave the governor $5 million to mount an advertising campaign, and our 60% support dropped below 50% by election day. Something similar to that could happen here. And while the probability of it is small, if you are an investor contemplating contributing $5 million to a marijuana legalization initiative, you want to be damn sure that you're going to win. And if there's even a small possibility that another billionaire with a different political point of view is going to come in with $5 million on the other side, you're not going to invest $5 million. In fact, we're going to need that billionaire to invest 10 billion so that we can, million, I'm sorry, so that we can overcome the 5 million on the other side. In order to do that, we have to develop the convincing messages for the target audience, or the target audiences that I mentioned before. We have to change their minds, and we have to give them a compelling reason to support us. Now, how are we going to do that? What's a compelling reason for a Latino voter, a single mom, or a senior citizen to support marijuana legalization? What we're finding so far in some public opinion research that's already been conducted since the end of the Prop 19 campaign is that it's difficult to come up with that compelling reason. People understand, for the most part, and by people I mean the members of these target audiences, they understand for the most part that marijuana is a relatively benign substance, that alcohol is far more harmful, that tobacco is far more harmful. They understand that people aren't being jailed for the most part for possession and use of marijuana. And they think that while marijuana is less harmful than alcohol, it's not very good. It's not good for kids, it's not good for them, they don't have experience with marijuana, they don't understand its uses, medical or otherwise, and their point of view generally is alcohol is bad, tobacco is bad, these are temptations for our children and for the weaker citizens among us, why add a third temptation, marijuana? Let's just leave the status quo as is. It's not so bad. People aren't going to jail. People who need marijuana have found ways of getting it. We have to break through that and give them a reason that resonates with their morality or their sense of right and wrong, their sense of justice. Perhaps the fiscal argument is one such argument that can break through. But it's not a very credible argument for this population. When you tell average voters that you're going to raise more money for government or shift money within government from one expenditure to another, or somehow save money, save taxpayers, you run into enormous skepticism. People don't believe that government money is going to be efficiently spent, or efficiently moved, or efficiently administered. So it's a difficult argument to make that the fiscal implications are important. We also have to look at turnout. A lot of people, me included, have argued that the turnout in 2012 will be much more favorable than the turnout in 2010. That's true. There will be more young people voting. But it's also true that turnout will work against us to some extent because there will be more seniors voting. Seniors will be very concerned about Republican attacks on Social Security, and as a result will turn out in large numbers. Single women of childbearing age traditionally vote overwhelmingly Democratic. So the president's campaign, re-election campaign, will be doing everything possible to turn those voters out. Similarly with Latino voters in California. Overwhelmingly Democratic voters, so the Democratic presidential campaign will turn them out. That Obama's campaign then is going to be turning out voters who are skeptical about legalizing marijuana, which puts more pressure on us to develop the compelling arguments that I talked about. Finally, the presidential campaign will rob us of press coverage. We got an enormous amount of press coverage for Prop 19. Everybody wanted to write about, oh, isn't it amazing, California might legalize marijuana. Well, in 2012, that's old news. It's not going to be covered as extensively, and the presidential campaign is going to draw all the oxygen out of the atmosphere, and we're not going to be able to mobilize a population through press coverage the way we were to some extent with Prop 19. So what's the answer? The answer is a public education campaign designed to impact the three populations I've been talking about before a political campaign gets underway. We have to run a public education campaign in January, February, and March of next year targeted to these three populations to change their minds, and we need to convince those people who can support such a campaign financially to do so. We then have to test messages, put them on the air, and change the electorate before we put our issue before them. Thanks.
Bill, Dale's hanging out with Jackson. I might just go ahead and jump up if you all don't mind. My name is Mauricio Garzon. I was the statewide campaign director for Proposition 19. Thank you. Truly a historic year. I'm a late entrant into this movement, and I am in awe of all of the great people that have brought us to be able to run such an amazing statewide effort in the form of Proposition 19. And we look forward to continuing that work. I think Bill laid out some great a framework of what's needed to go forward, and we'll certainly be looking at all that very carefully. Look to work together with a lot of the people that you heard up here today to make sure that we put together the best framework. Listening to your ideas and making sure that we line up the best possible effort for 2012. Before doing that, I want to just talk a little bit about Prop 19 and where we left off, since we're starting from the finish line of Prop 19. And while there's a lot of concerns, and clearly there's a lot of work that needs to be done, there was also a lot accomplished with a campaign that was fundamentally funded very modestly. That has to change, but just with a modestly funded campaign, Prop 19 came within a little bit over 344,000 votes to ending prohibition in California. That's out of 10 million votes. With all the complexities of the demographics that we're talking about and the many states that we have within this one state and all the different levels of information that people have, it's within our sights. There's just no doubt about it. In the process of Prop 19, we did a couple of other important things. I take great personal pride, along with the whole team, that we positively influenced the Attorney General race. That to me is incredibly important because at the core of the writing of Prop 19, at the core of everybody on the team, the Prop 19 team, patients are central. And the work that we're doing here is for us absolutely hand in hand in protecting the rights of this community in California that is the progenitor of what we've seen for the past 15 years. It is that community that we want to make sure is protected in the broader legalization for adult use work. A couple of the other things that I do just want to mention is we changed the face of marijuana law reform in a fundamental way by bringing together an unprecedented coalition. One of the things that we tried to do is talk about this issue in ways that people that are a little bit beyond the movement, in ways that they can understand, in ways that they can relate to and see that there is a real issue here with real consequences and real solutions. And this time out, we'll obviously be working to continue that broad coalition, and it's a coordinating force. There's clearly a public will to listen about this issue. It is clearly on the table for people to better understand what the problem is and what a real solution looks like. So people are listening, so we have a great opportunity to continue. And in fact, when Prop 19 was finished up, literally the next day, we received an incredible outpouring from around the world for us to continue. We also were approached by several very important opinion leaders that for various reasons weren't able to get involved in Prop 19, but have come to us and said, let us work with you this time out, and we will work with you and be able to champion this new initiative in 2012. So right now, just so you have it, what we're starting out is a feedback phase. So your input is desired, welcome, and invited. We will be stepping into a research phase. Thank you. And we'll be stepping into a research phase where we'll take some of the empirical analysis that Bill was talking about and combine that to help us guide all the great feedback and all the great ideas that are invariably going to be on the table. We'll be stepping into a larger outreach phase where we will, not only help organize the grassroots, but also the larger coalition, the larger grassroots partners that we already have a great working relationship with. And with that team stepping into a drafting to be able to put together the single best initiative for Californians. with that, I think my time is up, and I just want to thank you all for being here and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mauricio. My name is Doug Linney. I was the primary consultant for the Proposition 19 campaign, and I've done probably 60, 70 campaigns around the state, and been in this business for probably 25 years now. So I wanted to share some thoughts with you. I think, as Dale said, this is a panel where the rubber meets the road, and not that what we have to say is any more important than any of the other panels. But I think part of this and part of what I want to try and do is give a reality check. My business is to take a goal, a desire of a group to change, make some change, and turn it into messaging and targeting and things like that, and actually get something passed. So I think the fundamental question, first question, is can we pass something like this? I think we surprised everyone for the most part with Proposition 19. It did better than we thought. As Mauricio said, we were really 350,000 votes. If we had turned 350,000 no votes into yes votes, we'd now have a legal system in California for marijuana. And that's how close we were. Every election is different. As Bill pointed out, we're going to have a presidential election this time. There's going to be more voters. Some of our voters are going to come out this time naturally that didn't last time, but we're also going to get some of the opposition. And a big part of this will, in fact, be our ability to raise money. There's no shortage of consensus around that. When you've got an issue as controversial as this, it's going to take some strong messaging, and as Bill said, television is really the way to do that. So I think with all the theory about what we want to try and do and the people we want to mobilize and everything, if we can't raise the money to be able to get the message out, to turn back, the 75 years of prohibition and the fear of something changing, we're not going to be able to make that change. But we do start also with one other thing, and that is the majority of voters in California do support legalization. And I think that's where we start. And when we look at how are we going to do this, what do they want, what would they support, what does that really mean when it says that they're ready to support legalization? Obviously, not everybody who supports legalization voted for Proposition 19, for legalization. And so our ability to find out in this phase who those were, can we get them as supporters? I mean, we've had a lot of discussions, how does this interact with the medical marijuana industry and the dispensaries and the collectives? Can we get their support, or are we going to have an easier time actually getting some of the seniors and the Hispanics and other folks that Bill's pointed out that are kind of key target audiences? So these are all questions we need to be able to answer. Let me just talk a little bit about the reality of voters and what I learned in this election in terms of how voters think about this issue. And first of all, most voters don't think about marijuana. They really don't. And so one of the good things that came out of this campaign, amongst many, was that we forced people to think about it. It was on their ballot. So rather than just not dealing with it in their their everyday lives, they had to think about it. They had to think about legalization. Gave us a chance to educate them, mostly through the earned media this time, but an opportunity to do that. But I think that's the first thing to think about. So all the complexities that we talk about, what should be in an initiative or not in an initiative, for the most part, people were just grappling with the big issue: should it be legalized or not legalized? And then there's the whole issue around the fear factor. This was brought up in one of the earlier panels, and I believe very strongly, which is the difficulty of having something simple. Let's just suspend all the laws criminal laws that affect marijuana right now. People want to know, what's that going to look like? Is it going to be sold in grocery stores? Is it going to be sold in specialized places? How are we going to limit access? People want to know these answers before they change. It's just this fear, natural fear of going from what you know, even if you don't like it, to something that's unknown. And I think we're going to have to be able to answer those questions. And there I come to one of the, again, Judge Gray, I thought, said it well in some of the wording that he's working on with an initiative, and I think that we have much to learn there as well. That the more we can make it like alcohol, and we always heard this in focus groups, people said, oh, well, we'll do it like alcohol. We'll deal with impaired driving like alcohol. We'll deal with sales of it, like alcohol. And I think the closer we can get to that, the more people understand. Again, they're not going to think about the complexities, what are the problems with doing it this way, that way. It's something that's familiar to them. And so I think to the extent that the next drafting becomes closer to something that's regulated like alcohol, the more voters will understand that, and the more voters, when they think of regulating something, of legalizing it, that's an example that they can understand. So the last thing I wanted to say is a key part, I think, why we did as well as we did, and that we have an opportunity right now to do well in the next initiative, is to eliminate our opposition and to build our strength. Voters are always looking for reliable sources. I mean, there's a lot of information. They've got to decide a lot of things on the ballot. They're always looking for people that they trust who can tell them how they should vote on something. So the fact that we had the coalition that we did, and that we had the unions that supported us, that we had the Latino Voters League, we had the NAACP, and so on, really gave a lot of voters a chance to say, you know, I don't understand all this, but I trust these sources. And I think we need to further build that coalition, reach out to people, especially in this drafting phase, and see if we can get them to support this. We have a bipartisan effort of support from a lot of different sources that would be really important. And the flip side of that is just that we also want to eliminate the opposition. So as much as possible, look for possible areas. I mean, we're never going to know, we can't eliminate entirely the possibility that some billionaire comes in and spends, you know, $5 or $10 billion against us. But if we have a coalition that's put together, that the credibility is on our side for the messages that we have, it will help avoid that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Doug. I want to open up the floor to questions. So any of you that may have a question or concern that they'd like one of these speakers to address, I do hope that you keep comments to a minimum in the spirit of making it to the next panel on time. We will be the panel that catches us up, it looks like. So that's the good news. Susan, we have our first question.
Hi, my name is Adela. What do you think would happen if we get more than one initiative on the ballot?
Excellent question.
The reality is that I don't see that happening, just because the cost of putting it on the initiative, you know, $1 million or more just to put it on the ballot is so expensive that it's hard for me to see that there's actually going to be multiple funded efforts that way.
I would hope that we would find a measure that we can all unite around before anybody goes to signature gathering. I think that was a little bit of the problem with 19, was that the signature gathering took off without everybody getting on the same page, and then the money never came in after it was on the ballot.
Yeah, there are pros and cons, because it did raise awareness and increase the amount of conversations that we're having. The fact that we had more than one initiative, I think, was beneficial in many ways, but it also confused the issue at the end of the day.
Yeah, I just wonder why you guys are not attacking this thing from a different perspective. The benefits of cannabis in the construction, the food, the clothing, the fuel industries. They're building cars out of cannabis in Canada right now. They're building houses in Europe out of cannabis. The government just increased the ethanol content to 15%. An acre of cannabis will raise 4 times the ethanol as an acre of corn. The poor women in Mexico and other people make tortillas are complaining because we're using up their corn. Why aren't you doing what the people really do, is they vote their damn pocketbook? Tell them the benefits of cannabis, not, well, we want to smoke marijuana, blah, blah, blah. Tell them why they need it. The Constitution was written on cannabis. Washington and was farmed it, so did Jefferson, so did Adams. I mean, come on, you guys, our first flag was made out of cannabis.
You make a great point. You're making an excellent point of the food, fuel, and fiber versus taxes. We get it. We get that. It's what the press will talk about it. I'd like to turn this over.
I would like to
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. I'd like. Well, what I'd like to do is give the folks you're asking the question have an opportunity to answer.
I think both John Longville and in the last panel, and I mentioned that I think one of the most important parts of this is bringing hemp on board and making hemp legal in states, because hemp is passed in 2 states, the 2 states that are on the ballot. And I do believe in everything you were saying, and it was something I've been fighting for the last 4 years, and hopefully we can go that direction this time.
And what you're bringing up is increasing the coalition, the Sierra Club, folks that are concerned about the environment, folks that are concerned about their children. These are who we have to speak to. You are absolutely correct. You to go out to each one of them and start talking, because you talking with me is helpful, but you talking with Sierra Club is more helpful. You can help us bring these people on, and that's really what this is all about. I'd like to open it up also.
So, I thought Bill said it well. This is really fairly simple. I mean, when we try to write an initiative, we've got to write an initiative that's obviously going to pass. Our best way of doing that, I mean, we can talk about things in this room, but really we need to talk to people out there who are actually going to be voting for this. So a lot of what goes in initiative or doesn't go in an initiative is going to be poll driven. It's going to be, you know, what are those things that people want to hear, that they want to see, that's going to assure them this is something that they want. It's going to motivate them for what they want, as you suggest. And so I don't have any strong ideas as to exactly, you know, where the electorate is yet. We're going to be doing some polling on that, but I think that whatever we come up with in the end is going to have to be poll driven. It's not like we have a 60–70% majority here that are ready to vote for this thing. We're going to have to get it right.
Let me say one thing in response as well. The electorate doesn't respond rationally. The electorate responds emotionally. And if you want to bring a rational argument like the one that you just articulated to the electorate, you need a massive amount of money, because you can't do it in a 30-second commercial. You've got to spend money to educate people, find ways to motivate them to pay attention, because they're not inclined to pay attention on their own. These issues are important to you, but they're not important to the electorate or the portion of the electorate that we need to reach. Your arguments are correct, and if you could sit down with voters in a room and engage them in a 2-hour discussion, I have no doubt that you could convince them of the rationale or the rationality of your position. But you don't have that opportunity in an election, especially an election where the president's on the ballot, a senator's on the ballot, a congressperson's on the ballot, assembly people are on the ballot, and 6 other initiatives are on the ballot. You need to move people with 5 or 6 words on a billboard or 30 seconds in a commercial. And unless you can reduce your arguments down to that level and deliver those messages with powerful emotional content, why would anyone pay attention to you?
And that was the difficulty of the last election, is the misdirection of the opposition. Many times we would discuss those important things, but all anybody heard was legalize. I'd like to turn it over to the next question.
Oh, thank you. My name is Stephen Riggs, and in the interest of just asking a question, I would say, what are you guys doing, and how are you working towards getting that message out without the money? In this age of social media and viral media, I mean, Charlie Sheen got 1 million Twitter followers, right? I mean, I'm not on Twitter personally, but there's just to borrow from, I'm sure you've all read, or at least most people have read, at least on the panel, Malcolm Gladwell. I mean, there's mavens in this room. And there's mavens who aren't in this room that you guys are working with, but how are you bringing the mavens together with the connectors? Because I don't think it takes $5 million, $10 million. It takes, celebrities are worth more than their big pockets. So what are some ideas that you guys can bring for bringing those people on board?
Thank you. And what I'm going to do real quick is cut off the end of this line here as far as questions in the interest of moving the program along, and then I'm going to turn this question over to Mauricio.
And yeah, thank you for the question. That was actually one of the things that we did particularly well with Prop 19, is that we actually went online very heavy. We actually had the best online organizing platform available, and had some of the best consultants to help us build what's now a phenomenal list in California and nationally. That's one of the things that we deliberately built as part of the movement building under the coordinating power of Prop 19. We used social media extensively. We were the largest political page in California. It's why we got more votes than any of the Republican candidates, because we did lean on that people power. At the end, we were finally able to have the resources that came in late to reach out to some of the star power, some of the folks that you saw at the end of the campaign. Clearly very important opinion leaders, clearly very interested in this issue. But again, that's our finishing line, so that's one of the great strengths that we will bring forward, is that competency for online and new media organizing.
Okay, and Bill?
We need to move people who aren't plugged into the social media if we're going to win this. I'm a big fan of the social media. I did all the advertising over the last 10 years that built MoveOn.org. So I'm not insensitive to the power of the social media. But the people we need to reach to win a statewide initiative are not plugged into the social media. Those people who are plugged in, for the most part, we've already won over. In particular, people in the younger age cohorts. But we are not going to carry single moms, working class Latinos, and seniors over 65 with a strong emphasis on the social media. We need to have an emphasis, we need to be there, and it's an important part of an overall campaign and an important part of shaping overall opinion in the state. But if we can't get on broadcast and cable television, we can't move the people we need to reach. It's just that simple.
Yeah. And also that means that each one of you has to go talk to your dear Aunt Betty and your grandma and their cousin. All right, next.
Hi, Linda Mohan, Senior. Just wanted to speak very briefly, just mention very briefly that I think a lot of seniors get their information from their kids. And kids are on social media, and I don't want to take issue with what you had to say about TV, but if you could get kids to educate their parents and go over their mail-in ballots, I think that's a significant help.
You make an excellent point. Thank you very much. Good point. I don't know if you guys remember the Sarah Silverman Call Your Grandma in Florida. I think we should call your cousin in California and tell them to pass the 2012 initiative.
I have two questions. The first one directed particularly to Mr. Krute. The industrial production of hemp seems to me to be something that voters have approved in previous elections, and it's a huge, huge economic engine for California if it were done right. So I want to know why we're not thinking about linking industrial hemp to medical marijuana. The second question is to Mr. Zimmerman particularly, since we're aiming at specific constituencies, why are we talking about television versus direct mail?
Thank you. So first, Bill, this is actually near and dear to the labor market heart as well.
What was we didn't hear your question. Why
television.
are we, television versus what?
Direct mail.
Direct mail. Well, the answer to that is relatively straightforward. The cost of a unit communication delivery, that is one message to one voter in the mail, is the cost of printing an envelope and a letter and mailing it. So what is that, 40 cents a unit if it's third class, maybe 60 cents a unit if it's first class. The cost of delivering a message on television is less than 1/2 of 1 cent. That's one message delivered to one viewer. So when you're operating in a limited geographic area, like an assembly district, mail makes much more sense than television. But when you're operating across an entire state like California, television is far and away the cheapest and most cost-effective way of delivering messages to the public. That seems counterintuitive because an individual television commercial broadcast one time in one city like Los Angeles can cost $30,000. But that $30,000 is reaching 66 million people. So it's only 1/2 cent per person. That's why we use television instead of direct mail.
Thank you. And I want to turn this over and give Dave an opportunity to reply.
I would also like to speak about that because I have a slightly different view. I believe that there's a coalition of consultants around the state that know their areas very well, and I think that mixing television and doing targeted mail to seniors, to Latinos in certain parts of the state, can get direct messages to people we know will vote. One of the problems with TV is that out of all the people that watch it, maybe 20%, 30% of them actually go to the polls. And with mail, you can know exactly who you're mailing and know that they're voting. I think it's a combination. And separate from the person who said 10 million, you're right. I think it's more of a $25 or $30 million campaign that's going to win this thing big, which is why we need a coalition that includes the people who are already working legally in the industry because they know that it's going to benefit them. It includes the teachers, the firefighters, the nurses, because they always put money into campaigns that they know they're going to be benefiting from, and we need to include everybody on one measure that includes the industrial hemp, because that opens up an entire market, 5 layers of jobs in California before you could ever sell anything out, which you could sell out of state and bring money into the state. I think all these things combine to make a complete package, and that's the only way it's ever going to pass in California or any other place in the United States, because every time we try and do things where we leave local markets to do their own decision, we wind up with half the state wanting it one way and the other half wanting it another way, and part of them not even wanting to do it at all. So we can't keep doing that circle. That circle has been done too many times and lost too many times.
Thank you. Both good comments, and actually the very fact that the two of you both agree and disagree on the best way to move this forward illustrates exactly the issue we have at hand. And a lot of that's going to be dependent upon the purse strings. We can't even talk about a television ad if we don't have the money to do one, in which case the only mail we'll be sending is email. So I'd like to request two of the speakers so we can keep this moving. If you can try to keep your comments to about 1 minute so we can get all of the questions.
How you doing? My name is Boomer Shannon. One of the things that I recognized you guys talking about was the rational versus emotional stuff. And identifying I think there are words that you can use for both. You know, instead of saying Tax Regulated Cannabis 2010 Initiative, you can say Cannabis Freedom Act, right? There are words, there are things that you can say that do affect both rational and emotional responses in the populace. Meme crafting is invaluable, and I think that it's important that we find discussions on that.
That's an excellent point, thank you. And we're doing a lot of research, doing a lot of research to figure out what those hot button issues are, and that's kind of a little bit what we're trying to get across with this conversation we're having today, is there may be some things that you don't really like. You think, well, we could have written that better for this direction or that direction, but we wrote it that way because most of the people said that they would vote for it if it was written that way. And so it's not ideal, but it's better than it was, and it's just about moving in that direction and using those hot button words. Thank you.
Yeah, taxation, regulation, all scary things in a new proposition. But I was wondering about source in the new proposition. Or how would you protect Californians to sell their own product versus coming across the southern border or across state lines? Will there be anything in the new proposition that would protect Californians to their economic benefit?
I want to make sure I understood that. You're asking the people that are already in business, is there something to be written in to protect the people that are already here existing?
Well, I'm assuming that in the next election, presidential election, we're going to have a new proposition. In that proposition, there'll be a lot of scary things about taxation and regulation. And on top of that, how we protect the interests of Californians versus the interest of Mexico, Arizona, coming across state lines.
I see. Okay, thank you. Did any of you want to jump on that?
Basically, at this point, it's illegal across state lines, period, no matter what the law is in any state, because it's federally illegal, and once you cross the state line, you're no longer under state law at all. There's nothing that we would write into this that's going to change that. And coming in from Mexico with illegal drugs is going to always be illegal at this point. So I don't think that that's an issue at this point. And hopefully someday it'll be an issue because it's legal in all of the whole country, and at that point it'll be an industry.
Wouldn't it be lovely to stamp Made in the USA on all of those? Yes, it will matter for sure. But first we do have to protect the people that are here and doing it first and foremost to continue doing what you're doing. And I believe this is the last question.
Yes, my name is Kenji, and I wanted the panel to, I guess, address the question about the comparison to alcohol issue. During the Proposition 19 campaign, I went around and knocked on a lot of doors in late October and early November, and one of the things that the opposition said that seemed to hold a lot of weight was this idea, we have alcohol and tobacco, why do we want to add a third vice? And for a lot of the people I talked to, that seemed to sway them in the opposite direction. And so I just want to know if you guys have thought carefully about how we can counter that. And I agree with Professor Kleinman's comment earlier that really the way that the alcohol market is set up now is really distasteful to a lot of people. And I think if they see marijuana going in that direction, they'd be quite afraid. And so I'm just wondering if we put some thought into that, or if not, then I urge you to.
Thank you. That's an excellent question and an interesting dichotomy that we face with the alcohol issue. It's damned both ways on that one. Mr. Zimmerman?
I don't think there are any answers to that question yet, but I can assure you that there's a great deal of research being conducted right now to look for that answer. The parallels with alcohol are critical to understand, both from a positive and a negative aspect, and there have been at least 12 focus groups I know of since the November election that have dealt in part with that subject, and it is the subject of ongoing research right now.
Yeah, I would agree. It is one of the challenging ones. Obviously, part of it is to check the cross-section. Does the people who say we should legalize marijuana, the same people who say, oh, you know, we already have enough problems with alcohol and cigarettes? I mean, my sense is that that's a different subset of people, and that we're probably not going to get them. But like Bill said, there's still research that we need to do. And I think that, you know, Proposition 19 changed some attitudes in people. And so the polls that we did 2 years ago when we were writing 19, I think we're going to find some different results now. And I think we're going to find some different results than we had, you know, in the tracking polls towards the end of 19. You know, and this, the commentary that goes along with spinning, how did 19 play out and stuff. So I'm going to be very interested when we're able to do some more polling locally here.
Once again, there's another issue that I think hemp brings, eliminates a lot of, because when you're talking about hemp as a whole and not cannabis or marijuana, you are talking about a much bigger issue. Secondly, we shouldn't be trying to say we're better than alcohol. We shouldn't be talking about alcohol at all, in my opinion. We should be talking about the fact that of the medicine, the medical value of marijuana, and how alcohol will never be a doctor's prescribed medicine, and there's no comparison between the two. Tobacco, same thing.
So I thank the speakers for their comments, and you know, at the end of the day, this really truly is going to be an emotional election, because unfortunately, rational doesn't often follow most people into the booth. At the end of the day, it's emotion that drives people, and it's going to be key in writing this so that most of the voters that could be soft yeses, definite yeses, maybe yeses, all swing to the yes direction by finding what's in it for them. And we're going to have to run multiple campaigns throughout the state, because what works in Northern California will not work in Southern California. What works in rural communities will not work in the cities. So we will probably have to kind of split messaging a little bit to talk about what's most important to each of these communities, and it's up to us to figure out what's in it for them to get us where we want to be. And it's up to us to go speak to each of these groups of people, be it the legislators or the medical cannabis community or the local neighborhood community or moms or the AARP, and find out what's important to them. And that's when we'll hit on that right messaging, where it doesn't matter if you're comparing it to alcohol or if it's worse than alcohol, or should we manage it like alcohol. We should just stop putting people in jail over it, and that's something we can all agree on. So that's what we're going to have to do moving forward, and I thank you for being a part of the conversation. Thank you so much to my illustrious panel. I appreciate your time. Thank you.